Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The bullet shattered the champagne flute in Kalin's hand before the sound of the gunshot even registered, spraying crystal shards and expensive vintage across his tuxedo like a burst of diamonds and blood. In the chaotic nanosecond that followed, before the screams of the gala attendees erupted, before the chandeliers shook with the reverberation of heavy-caliber fire, Kalin Vance didn't dive for cover. He didn't freeze. His body, honed by years of brutalizing contact sports and underground cage fighting, moved with an instinct faster than thought. He wasn't protecting himself. He was already moving to shield the man standing beside him, the man he was supposed to hate, the man who owned his debt, his life, and, terrifyingly, his sanity. As Kalin tackled Lysander Thorne to the marble floor, covering the slender, elegant body with his own wall of muscle, he realized with a sickening jolt that he would burn the world down just to keep a single scratch off this venomous, beautiful creature. 3 weeks earlier, Kalin's life had been a simple, monochromatic existence of pain and sweat. He was known in the underground circuits simply as the Iron Wall. Standing 6'4", with shoulders that strained the fabric of cheap t-shirts and a face permanently set in a scowl of stoic indifference, Kalin was a former collegiate linebacker who had fallen from grace hard and fast. An injury had ended the pro dreams. A family tragedy had ended the scholarship. Now, he fought in illegal basements where the air smelled of iron and unwashed bodies, pummeling other desperate men into unconsciousness to pay for the private care facility, keeping his younger sister, Maya, alive. Maya was the secret. To the world, Kalin was a brute, a meathead, a hardened jock who spoke in grunts and broke bones for cash. No one knew that he spent his mornings reading poetry to a comatose girl, or that his hands, usually wrapped in tape, were gentle enough to braid her hair. Then came the night the debt changed hands. Kalin had just finished dismantling a challenger twice his weight. He was sitting in the locker room, icing his knuckles, when the door opened. It wasn't his usual handler, a sweaty bookie named Marco. It was a ghost. Or at least a man who looked like one. He was lean, dressed in a charcoal three-piece suit that cost more than Kalin's entire life earnings. His hair was silver blonde, cut sharp and undercut, falling over eyes that were the color of glacial ice. He leaned against the doorframe, twirling a cane topped with a silver serpent's head. "You fight like you want to die, Mr. Vance," the stranger said. His voice was smooth, a baritone purr that scraped pleasantly against Kalin's nerves. "But you defend yourself like you have something to live for." Kalin didn't stand. He didn't like pretty men in suits. They usually meant trouble. "Who are you? Where's Marco?" "Marco retired early." "Unexpectedly," the man said, stepping into the room. The scent of sandalwood and cold rain followed him. "I bought his ledger." "Which means I bought you." Kalin stood up then, towering over the intruder. He used his size as a weapon, casting a shadow over the smaller man. "I'm not for sale. Everyone is for sale. It's merely a question of currency." The stranger looked up, unintimidated. His eyes raked over Kalin's bruised torso, the tattoos winding up his arms, the scar on his lip. "I am Lysander Thorne, and as of 20 minutes ago, I own the facility housing your sister." The air left the room. Kalin's hands clenched into fists, the knuckles turning white. "If you touch her, I have no interest in harming a sleeping girl," Lysander said, stepping closer, invading Kalin's personal space. He reached out, his gloved hand hovering inches from Kalin's heaving chest. "I need a shield, Kalin. My previous head of security lacked durability. You take hits for a living. I want you to take them for me." "You want a dog," Kalin spat. "I want a wolf," Lysander corrected softly. "One that bites on command. Clear your debt. 1 year of service. You live in my penthouse. You go where I go. You keep me breathing. Do that, and your sister's care is paid for in perpetuity." It was a deal with the devil. Kalin knew it. Lysander Thorne was rumored to be the Viper of the East End, a corporate raider with ties to syndicates that the police were too afraid to investigate. But looking at the icy determination in Lysander's eyes, Kalin knew he had no choice. 1 year, Kalin growled. Lysander smiled, and it was a terrifying, beautiful thing. Welcome to the nest, pet. Living with Lysander was a psychological war of attrition. The penthouse was a fortress of glass and steel overlooking the city skyline, filled with modern art and silence. Kalin felt like a bull in a china shop. He was used to gym bags and cheap takeout. Here, meals were prepared by a chef, and he was forced into tailored suits that felt like straitjackets. Lysander was an enigma. He was cruel to his business rivals, decimating them with a few phone calls or a whispered threat. But he treated Kalin with a maddening mix of condescension and curiosity. Stand straighter, Lysander would command, adjusting Kalin's tie with lingering fingers. You look like a bouncer at a dive bar. You are the right hand of Lysander Thorne. Act like it. I am a bouncer, Kalin would mutter, pulling away. He hated the way his skin pricked with heat whenever Lysander touched him. It was a reaction he couldn't control, a betrayal of his own body. He was straight, or at least he told himself he was. He liked women. He liked simplicity. Lysander was neither. But the snake was persistent. He seemed to delight in flustering the stoic jock. He would walk around the penthouse in silk robes that left little to the imagination, ask Kalin probing questions about his past, and demand Kalin sit with him while he played the grand piano at midnight. One rainy Tuesday, the dynamic shifted. Lysander had dragged Kalin to an underground auction. The item of interest was a stolen microchip embedded in a Faberge egg. The tension in the room was palpable. Kalin stood behind Lysander's chair, scanning the crowd, his hand hovering near the gun holstered under his jacket. The deal went south. A rival syndicate, the Red Hounds, crashed the party. Get down, Kalin roared, flipping the heavy oak table to create a barricade just as the submachine guns opened fire. Splinters flew. Chaos erupted. Kalin grabbed Lysander by the waist, hauling him through the kitchen exit. They burst into the alleyway, rain soaking them instantly. 3 men blocked their path. Kalin didn't hesitate. He unleashed the violence he had kept bottled up in the penthouse. It wasn't the disciplined fighting of the ring. It was guttural, desperate survival. He broke an arm, shattered a kneecap, and took a knife slash across his forearm to keep a blade away from Lysander's throat. When the last man fell, Kalin spun around, chest heaving, blood dripping from his arm. We need to move. Lysander was staring at him, not with fear, but with a dark, dilated hunger. The rain plastered his silver hair to his forehead. He stepped forward, ignoring the carnage around them, and took Kalin's bleeding arm. You're hurt, Lysander whispered. It's a scratch, Kalin grunted, adrenaline crashing. It's my blood payment, Lysander corrected. He pulled a pristine handkerchief from his pocket and tied it tight around the wound. His eyes locked with Kalin's. You are magnificent when you are violent, Kalin. For a moment, in the dirty alleyway, amidst the groans of unconscious men, the air between them crackled with something more dangerous than gunfire. Kalin looked at the man he was supposed to protect, this manipulative, arrogant snake, and felt a surge of possessiveness so strong it nearly brought him to his knees. He didn't pull away. Let's go home, Lysander. The aftermath brought the slow burn to a boiling point. Back at the penthouse, Lysander refused to let the private doctor tend to Kalin. He did it himself. He sat Kalin on the edge of the master bathtub, stripped him of his ruined shirt, and cleaned the wound with meticulous care. Kalin sat still, watching Lysander's focused expression. The viper had shed his armor. He looked tired, human. Why do you do this? Kalin asked quietly, the sound of water dripping from the faucet filling the silence. You have enough money to disappear. Why keep playing these games? Lysander paused, holding a sterile gauze pad. He looked up, his eyes vulnerable for the first time. Because power is the only thing that keeps the silence away, Kalin. Without the noise of the game, I have to listen to my own thoughts. And they are not kind company. You have people, Kalin said. I have employees. I have sycophants. I have enemies, Lysander murmured. He stepped between Kalin's spread knees to tape the bandage. The proximity was dizzying. I don't have equals. I'm not your equal, Kalin said, his voice rough. I'm your employee. Lysander's hand rested on Kalin's bare chest, right over his heart. He could feel the frantic rhythm beneath the muscle. Are you? He looked up and the challenge was there again, but softer. A simple employee wouldn't look at me the way you do. Like you want to strangle me or kiss me, and you haven't decided which. Kalin's breath hitched. It's a fine line. Walk it, Lysander dared him. Kalin grabbed Lysander's wrist. His grip was strong, bruising. He should push him away. He should remember the debt, the sister, the danger. But looking at Lysander's parted lips, the defiance masking a desperate need for connection, Kalin broke. He didn't kiss him gently. He surged forward, capturing Lysander's mouth with a hunger that had been building for months. It was a clash of teeth and tongue, a fight for dominance. Lysander made a noise in the back of his throat, a whimpering sound that destroyed Kalin's restraint and melted into the embrace, his fingers tangling in Kalin's short hair. For a hardened jock who thought he knew the world, Kalin realized he knew nothing. Kissing Lysander was like drinking poison and asking for seconds. It was electric, terrifying, and the most right thing he had ever felt. But the world of the Viper doesn't allow for fairy tales. The betrayal came 2 weeks later. Kalin was at the hospital visiting Maya. She was having a good day, her vitals were strong. He was reading her a passage from a book on classical architecture. His secret passion, the degree he never finished, when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. Who is this? Mr. Vance. A gravelly voice replied. We have something that belongs to you. Or rather, someone. A video file arrived. Kalin opened it, his blood turning to ice. It was footage of Maya's room. Live footage. A red laser dot was dancing on her forehead. If you want her to wake up, the voice said, you will bring us Lysander Thorne. Tonight. The docks. Warehouse 4. Kalin's phone cracked in his grip. If you touch her, bring him to us. Alive. Or the girl dies. The line went dead. Kalin sat in the chair, the silence of the hospital room deafening. He was the iron wall. He could take a punch. He could take a bullet. But this was a choice between his heart and his soul. He went back to the penthouse. Lysander was in the study pouring a whiskey. He looked up, smiling when Kalin entered, but the smile faded when he saw Kalin's face. Kalin? Lysander put the glass down. What's wrong? Kalin didn't speak. He couldn't. If he told Lysander, Lysander would try to handle it and Maya might die. The Red Hounds weren't playing. They wanted the head of the Viper. I need you to come with me, Kalin said, his voice hollow. Business matter. Urgent. It was a flimsy lie. Lysander was a genius. He should have spotted it. But Lysander looked at Kalin, really looked at him, and saw the desperation. All right, Lysander said simply. He grabbed his coat. Lead the way. The drive to the docks was silent. Kalin's hands gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles popped. He was going to trade the man he loved for his sister. He was a monster. When they arrived at the abandoned warehouse, the trap was set. Floodlights blinded them. Dozens of men armed with assault rifles emerged from the shadows. The leader of the Red Hounds, a scarred brute named Gregor, stepped forward. Good dog, Gregor laughed. Bring him here. Kalin got out of the car. He opened the passenger door and pulled Lysander out. Lysander didn't struggle. He looked at the armed men, then at Kalin. His expression was unreadable. I'm sorry, Kalin whispered, his voice breaking. Gregor smirked. Toss him over, Vance. And your sister lives. Kalin walked Lysander toward the middle of the open space. The exchange point. Is she safe? Lysander asked softly, not looking at the guns pointed at him, but at Kalin. Kalin froze. What? Your sister, Lysander said calmly. Is this for her? Yes, Kalin choked out. Good, Lysander said. He reached into his pocket. Kalin flinched, expecting a weapon, but Lysander pulled out a small remote. Then you won't mind if I cleared the board. Lysander pressed the button. A mile away, at the hospital, the private security detail Lysander had secretly assigned to Maya's room engaged. Kalin's earpiece, which he had thought disconnected, crackled to life. It was Lysander's head of intelligence. Target secure, Mr. Vance. The sniper in the hospital wing has been neutralized. Maya is safe. Kalin stared at Lysander. You knew. I always know, Lysander said, a sad, weary smile touching his lips. I knew the moment you walked in the door. You're a terrible liar, Kalin. But I had to be sure you wouldn't let me die for nothing. Gregor roared in confusion. Enough talk. Kill them both. Get down. Kalin screamed. But this time he didn't just shield Lysander. The realization hit him like a freight train. Lysander had walked into a death trap, knowing Kalin was leading him there, just to buy time for his own team to save Kalin's sister. He had risked his life on the gamble that Kalin wouldn't actually hand him over at the last second. Kalin roared, a sound of pure, primal fury. He didn't cover Lysander this time. He pushed him behind a concrete pillar and turned to face the army. He was the Iron Wall, and they had threatened his family. Both of them. Kalin drew his twin pistols, weapons he rarely used, preferring his fists, and unleashed hell. But he wasn't alone. Lysander, the fragile snake, pulled a compact submachine gun from under his coat and fired with terrifying precision from cover. You walked into a trap, Kalin yelled over the gunfire, dropping 2 men. I trust my investments, Lysander yelled back, reloading with a fluid grace. And you, my dear wolf, are my greatest investment. The firefight was brutal. Kalin took a grazing shot to the shoulder, but he didn't feel it. He moved through the warehouse like a force of nature, closing the distance on Gregor. He disarmed the leader with a bone-shattering kick and slammed him into the pavement. When the smoke cleared, the police sirens were wailing in the distance. Lysander's payroll cops, arriving to clean up the mess. Kalin stood over the unconscious body of Gregor, panting, blood dripping from his brow. He turned to find Lysander leaning against the pillar, pale but unharmed. Kalin marched over to him. He looked furious. He looked terrifying. You could have died, Kalin snarled, grabbing Lysander by the lapels of his ruined coat. You knew I was betraying you, and you got in the car anyway. I knew you were cornered, Lysander said, his eyes searching Kalin's face. And I knew that if I didn't come, you would have tried to fight them all alone and died. I couldn't allow that. Why? Kalin shook him. Why would you trust me? Because... Lysander reached up, his cool fingers touching the blood on Kalin's cheek. You are the only person who ever stood in front of me, not behind me. I gambled on your heart, Kalin. Did I win? Kalin looked at the man who had saved his sister, the man who had walked into the barrel of a gun for him. The anger drained away, replaced by an overwhelming, crushing love. You win, Kalin whispered. You crazy, manipulative snake. You win everything. He kissed him then, fierce and claiming, right there amidst the ruins of the warehouse and the approaching sirens. It wasn't a kiss of debt or duty. It was a promise. 6 months later, the gala was in full swing. The chandeliers had been repaired. The elite of the city mingled, drinking champagne and whispering about the power couple at the center of the room. Lysander Thorne stood by the balcony, looking resplendent in black velvet. Beside him stood Kalin Vance, no longer looking like an uncomfortable bodyguard, but like a king in his own right. The scar on his eyebrow only added to his dangerous allure. A rival businessman approached, looking sneeringly at Kalin. Mr. Thorne, I see you still keep your hired help clothes. Lysander smiled, sipping his wine. Mr. Vance is not help. He is my partner. Partner? The man laughed. A former cage fighter? Kalin stepped forward. He didn't raise a fist. He didn't need to. He simply adjusted his cufflinks, revealing the tattoo on his wrist that matched the serpent on Lysander's cane. He smiled, and it was a sharp, predatory thing he had learned from the best. "Careful," Kalin said, his voice low and rumbling. "The snake has venom, but the wall crushes you if you push too hard." The businessman paled and scurried away. Lysander laughed softly, sliding his arm through Kalin's. "You're learning, my love." That was almost poetic. "I had a good teacher," Kalin murmured, leaning down to brush his lips against Lysander's ear. "Let's go home. I want to hear you play the piano." "Only if you turn the pages," Lysander teased. "I'll do whatever you want," Kalin promised. "As long as I'm the one holding the leash." Lysander's eyes darkened with delight. "Oh, Kalin, we both know the leash is a circle." And as they walked out into the night, the city of shadows bowed to them. The jock and the snake. The wall and the viper. Two broken pieces that, when fused together in the heat of violence and passion, became unbreakable. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf, by letting the wolf swallow him whole. If you enjoyed seeing Lysander manipulate his way into Kalin's heart, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a lover who walked into a trap just to prove you wouldn't let them die? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then,